There is no secret about this. We all know that we don't see the full extent of an idea before it all comes to pass. In fact, we have no clue how things are going to turn out when an idea comes to us. We just are sniffing and we're just feeling. It's like we're groping in the dark, but we're on to something. We are on to something major, but we don't know the dregs of the details of how that idea is going to pan out. So in the episodes, I've been talking about how we can harness ideas that are coming into our minds, into our lives, and how we can connect those ideas into a life of purpose, into a life of meaning, into a life of productivity, and at the end of the day, how we can be able to expand and expand and deploy our potential. One more way in which we can do this. Stay tuned.
Welcome to the Life Signatures podcast with Lawrence Namale. Lawrence is a life coach, author, and keynote speaker who loves to tackle different topics on purpose, productivity, and resilience. His mission in life is to awaken all your boundless possibilities available in you. Life Signatures podcast is dedicated to bring to reality every single person who knows that deep down in their gut, there's got to be more to life than this. And now, here is your host, Lawrence Namale.
I think this guy is a philosopher. He's called Samuel Taylor Coleridge. This is what Samuel Taylor Coleridge said. Say that the wise only possess ideas. The great part of mankind are possessed by them. Now, I'm talking about ideas, and one of the things I've mentioned over and over again in these episodes is that ideas are not things that are just for a few people, a few chosen genius people who are thinking. No, ideas are things that come to us the same way breath and oxygen comes to us. In other words, ideas are ubiquitous. But the difference is the movement with the ideas, the turning out the ideas into tangible equivalent on the face of the earth. That's what makes the difference with ideas. In other words, all of us at one point in time interacted with an idea, or messed around with an idea, or it came to our mind, or we thought about an idea. Maybe we were thinking about it, maybe we were just doing life, but an idea came to us, it happened to us. Now, what changes, or what happens next, is the most critical thing. There is no human being you'll ever see here on the face of the earth who has never had an idea. But the thing with ideas is this: they don't come fully formed. They are not in and of themselves available. Basically, like when you give birth to a baby, that baby needs nurturing, that baby needs growth, that baby needs sustainability, that baby needs protection, that baby needs security. And how long does that baby need security? All those things? It is years. You cannot tell me that you can just take care of a baby until the baby is able to walk, and then the baby is able to run, and the baby is able to eat, and then you've done your job. No. It is just so much you need to do. The same thing with ideas. What we need to divorce ourselves from is the mentality of 30 days. That this idea should give me moolah in the next 30 days. This idea should give me traction in the next 30 days. This idea should turn out in the next 30 days. If you go to the trajectory of Facebook, just go to Google and say Facebook trajectory growth, you will see something very interesting, that it was for a long period of time, actually years, that Facebook was just in the thousands, and then at some point in time, it got to a critical mass and it started just going into the millions and even into an overdrive. But there is a possibility that even in the initial stages of that idea of Facebook, it would have been aborted, would have been killed. And that, it just makes me to wonder and to shudder to think of the fact of very many ideas that we've never exploited, never gone through them because of one reason or another, because we thought that this thing, maybe it might not be able to scale, or we just didn't even give a hoot about it, and it just disappeared. So we're thinking, we're saying, what can we do with the ideas? I'm saying that there are several things that we should be able to do with them. And the very first discipline we should have with the ideas is to document what it is. In other words, the moment it comes to your mind, let me tell you something. There are very many ideas that went past yesterday, and today if I asked you about them, you don't remember because you never documented them. Write those ideas down and give them at least 5 minutes of just turning them in your mind and just making them mature with you. The second thing you do with the idea is to dare it. In other words, to stick out with it like a sore thumb and say, I am going to dedicate my life to it. And the third thing we said is to deal with it. In other words, you start locating time, resources, people, and so on, and strategies and thinking, and you just set the idea into motion. You start making the idea to come into being clothed in the physical equivalent on the face of the earth. And then the fourth thing we said you do with the idea, you do it. As in, you just go all in and start implementing the idea. You've thought about it, you've talked about it, you've masterminded about it, you've drawn plans about it, and now you do it to such an extent that you can be able to feed the idea to the supposed prospect, people who can benefit with the idea. And then you get feedback from those guys. Once you get feedback from those guys, this is what I want us to discuss today. What do you do? The other thing that you can do with the idea number 5 is to diversify the idea. And you know what that means? Facebook, for example, was never created for the masses. The internet itself was never created for the masses. The internet was two networks, I think ARPANET and I cannot remember the other one, NSFNet, cannot remember the other ones. They were used in the military, whatever, to do whatever it is they were doing, science departments and the military connecting and doing research and so on. Boom! The internet was born. Facebook itself was never created. In fact, this man of Facebook says that ideas never come fully formed. That is Mark Zuckerberg when he was addressing Stanford, making a Stanford commencement speech some years back. He said ideas never come fully formed. In other words, when you start with an idea, it is going to start clothing itself in different formats that you never even saw. Your part to play is to make sure that you are as flexible as possible to follow through with the idea, whatever place it's going to lead you. You are not the leader. I've discovered one thing: you are not the leader with the idea. The idea is the leader. By the way, you're just leading one another. You lean into the idea and it leads you, and the idea, you lead it and it leads you. You lead it and it leads you. It's like a tandem bike, riding a tandem bike. You don't know where the idea is going to take you. In fact, you thought you knew where the idea is going to take you, but you don't. And then when you start leaning into it, it starts giving you branches, telling you that you started with podcasting. You started with blogging. You can now do a podcast. How about you start online courses? How about you start a school? How about you start a university? That is how ideas normally grow. And that is why diversification with ideas is important. One of the biggest problems that we have is wanting to be certain about something. And so we stick with it. Did you remember the days when, if you are old enough like me, the days when the computers came and they became a mainstay? There were very many people who cast the computers and they say, I'm not going to learn how to use a computer. I know my paper, I know my pen, I know my typewriter. Listen, you've got to be open-minded and get out of your culture and let the idea take you to a better place. Stick with the idea and let it start to gain feet. T.D. Jakes did the same thing with the book, like we talked about. He did the book, he did the conferences, he did the whatever it is he did until it became a movie, and so on and so forth. The thing with the ideas is that they will always grow bigger than when we originally thought. All the time, they will always grow bigger than when we originally thought about them. They will always clothe themselves, diversify themselves, go in a tandem, go in a direction that we never even thought is going to go, and they will keep increasing by leaps and by bounds. So I'm asking you to be open-minded, especially when you start hearing people giving you feedback now that you've interacted with that particular idea. Mark Zuckerberg tells us that when we read the story of Facebook, we are told that this was for college students, to connect college students. I don't know what it is they were connecting. I don't know if it was social, it was just whatever. It was never meant for the masses. But today, the idea of Facebook being such a big multi-billion-dollar enterprise, is actually an empire, so much so that they can have a word against the United States president, and they can shut him and they can cancel the guy. That's how big the idea can be able to grow. And I'm not asking you to look for that, to look for growing big so that you can be able to cancel people and shut them down. But my point is simple, that one of the things, especially in the advanced stages of pursuing an idea, one of the things that you're going to see with the idea, it is that it is going to start clothing itself in ways and formats that you never originally imagined. That is the biggest characteristic of an idea, that it never remains faithful to the original, kid it was, the original toddler it was, the original concept it was. Basically, what an idea is an invite. It's like a door that you open into a world of possibilities and a world of mysteries. You enter into the world of possibilities and into the world of mysteries through following ideas. And once you've entered into that door, I know you need to stay faithful with the concept, but you should also be as open-minded as possible to see where this concept is going to take you. Now, in the entrepreneurial world, in the startup world, they normally call this thing pivoting or pivoting, whichever way you want to pronounce it. It means that you go to maybe even a roadblock, and that's one of the things that you're going to find. Another characteristic of an idea is that it's going to invite you to a place where you're going to fail. One time you're going to be so much in love with the idea, you think it's a novel idea, and then when you tell the people and so on and so forth, they can't read through, and genuinely it can't scale. It can't make sense on the face of the earth. What does that mean? Do you abandon the idea? You go back to the door? No. You've come so far with that idea and you've learned some things. And now you can either be able to start with the input of the experience you've had, or you can be able to just channel or diversify, just add one small tiny bit onto it and clothe the idea in a different way. Remember the story of the guy who came up with the crisps? You know how it was? They were always doing chips. And there's this customer who is belligerent, and the customer insists, I do not want chips. I want these things that are sliced. I want tiny. Your chips are so huge and they are soggy. I want them to be tiny and dry. They had never done something of that nature before. And every time the chef brings in, the customer insists, this is not what I want. And maybe the customer was just being belligerent and just a knucklehead, just trying to make trouble. But through that, a multi-billion-dollar enterprise of crisps was created. Today, crisps are a major industry because of the idea of pivoting. Something that doesn't happen, you change, and so on. And this is where you need to fall in love with innovation. That's why you need to not only to be open-minded to where your idea is going to take you, but you also need to be open-minded to yourself, that you can sit back and you start analyzing and reviewing and seeing how your idea is panning out, and you start asking questions. Suppose we change this, suppose we add that, suppose we remove this, suppose we revamp this. Diversify your idea and give it 7 lives, so to speak. All right. I do believe that when you're starting a business, for example, when you're starting an idea or you're steeped into one thing, there are several branches you can have under the same roof. Several of them. You can't just be one. Even if you're a purpose coach, there are very many things you can do. You can write books, you can do workbooks, you can do online classes, you can do conferences, you can do whatever it is that you want to do. You can do podcasts, you can do a TV show, you can do just so much. So one of the major things you and I need to do with our ideas is to make sure that we diversify them. Tomorrow we are going to come to a close, hopefully, on this discussion about ideas. Until then, learn to diversify your idea. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Life Signatures Radio. If you enjoyed today's show, subscribe to Life Signatures Radio on iTunes, Stitcher, or visit our website at lifesignatures.libsyn.com. Life Signatures Radio, fresh, clean, and inspiring.